Hi there, Paula Kensington here. I wanted to record some thoughts from last week's conference that I went to, the Better Futures Forum conference in Canberra, and spent 2 days there with other business leaders, with advocates, with people from the business and communities that are, clearly concerned about the climate and the impact that we're having on our environment. And I think, I attended from a commercial financial aspect, and there was only two accountants in probably about 100 or 200 more people, which I thought was interesting. But I guess it wasn't really aimed at finance people per se. But it starts me to think about this sort of divide between how do we actually solve the issues, and who's responsible for solving those issues. And I feel like as business leaders and as corporations, we need to play a part in paying, repaying that debt that I talk about, the debt to nature, but also, earning the license to operate in business, and not just making money for shareholders, but how do we actually pay that back to other stakeholders, some of which are more obvious than others, so that we're always thinking about the impact that we're having on the environment and on the people and nature and also the economy, but always thinking about how do we repay that and earn our license to operate. So coming out of the conference, a couple of points that I really liked. Somebody referred to this next decade as the decisive decade. Australia is poised to show leadership. And also we need to properly fund net positive solutions, because if we don't, then if we're living on an unhealthy planet, then this could be our biggest health problem that we face, both locally in Australia and the region, but also globally. So we're at that Kodak moment where we need to actually, show leadership and make the big decisions that we have to make commercially and also in government, but also as consumers as well. So what it's done for me these 2 days is it's really opened my eyes to what's happening. It's raised my awareness. It's also sparked my innovative thinking. So it's kind of thinking around how do we come at this with new thinking. We can't solve the problems with yesterday's thinking. And, it's really encouraging me to continue to be that voice for nature in business. So it's really about activating action. And so that's kind of how I'm feeling. And as I said, I think the opportunity is how do we connect business, consumers and government with the interconnectedness of land, water, soil, air, plants, animals and people. Another great term that I heard last week was public luxury and private sufficiency. Now that gets me thinking, what does sufficiency mean? And it goes back to that consumer driven demand. And that more and more and more has always been instinctively, from a finance perspective, what businesses are looking for: more profit, more revenue. But then what does sufficiency mean, and what does that look like for business? And looking at the consumption, another term that I heard was subtogenic consumption systems, which I think potentially means a system that's got significant but not maybe immediately visible impact on planetary health and equity. So it's, it could be that hidden or systemic forces that's driving that consumption behaviours, contributing to global health and poor environmental outcomes. Just, I think it's worth just sort of thinking about, reflecting on that. What does sufficiency mean in our business? And, how much EBITDA, how much profit, how much dividends are right just to go back to shareholders? How much can we redistribute to other avenues where we can think about the impact that we're making? And again, thinking that, opening my eyes to what's happening. But I was also then introduced to a few networks around, putting climate front and centre. So Climate 200, you might be aware of in Australia. It's a community crowd-funded initiative supporting political candidates that are committed to science-based response to the climate crisis, around restoring integrity to politics and advancing respect and safety for women. So that was a really interesting group that I was introduced to. And then also a group of concerned scientists. So Wentworth Group of Concerned Scientists, they've actually written a blueprint on how to repair Australia's landscapes, 24 practical actions and investments across five key environmental asset groups. So I am going to check that out and work with some of the connections that I've made from there, because I really think this is integral to how do we repay our debt to nature. And then finally, there was another organisation that I was introduced to called NRM, so Natural Resource Management Network. And this group's been going since the 1990s. Again, it's really about being connected and being aware and being this sponge of just absorbing all this new knowledge. I was actually quite exhausted actually after the 2 days, because you're just fully on listening, engaging, and just stretching your own thinking. But it's really given me energy to continue with the work that I'm doing around how do we build not just a compliant net zero model, but how do we actually get beyond net zero in the same time frame. We can't, as I say, spend another 30 years getting to the next accounting standards that are going to get us past net zero. So yeah, I'm continuing my work there. And I think, we heard last week that it's really time to step up and scale up and actually taking action. Fascinating, well, not fascinating, but, a concerning fact that 60% of Australians in 2022 have been impacted by climate disaster. So, that's something that's impacting more than half of Australians. So it's really coming to everybody's backyard, front door, whatever you call. But we're in this situation that we've got to join together to get to really get back to a planet that is better for all of us and better for our futures. We were talking about valuing nature. We're talking about how do we connect back to nature, and what have we lost, and at what cost have we lost that? People, as I sit here looking out into my beautiful garden, that connection back to nature is so important. And yet, how many businesses are actually thinking that? So if you're a finance leader, if you're a business leader, I would urge you to think about what's in your next 12 months budget forecast strategy that's actually repaying debt to nature. And if there isn't anything, then how much could we invest in doing that? And what might it take to do so? So hopefully that's been of interest. If you want to know more, I'll be happy to speak directly with you, or just follow me as we continue our journey into being better business leaders.